Now, before starting to code, I will have to plan my way towards like coding. So I'm going to use an application called Excalidraw, and I'm going to insert my import my image here and start working on my plan to actually see how I can go from my mockup into an actual HTML page. So I will go to the files that I have downloaded here from the repository, and I will open up and drag the FlappyApp nodes PNG right here. So this imports the image right here on Excalidraw. I will make it as big as possible. And now it's time to plan our way towards the HTML skeleton, the HTML structure. So the problem with going from a mockup to HTML, especially when one is beginning with HTML and of course CSS, it's sometimes we are looking at an image and we're completely lost. We feel lost. I mean, how can I go from this design into the actual HTML elements? There's a completely different logic. This is an image, it has some shapes, and HTML is all about like HTML elements and nested HTML elements. So how can I start? So one tip I can share is that we can start thinking in terms of boxes. In HTML, all HTML elements are considered boxes, and hence the box model. So we have to switch to a box mindset. We have to see a design and start thinking in boxes. So that's the first tip. That's the first insight. Start thinking in boxes. Now the next step is, okay, I can work with boxes. So I will select a box shape here, and in my diagram I will start to split my my design into boxes, and then I can translate these boxes into actual HTML elements. So the first thing is to start on a high level, like see what's the one box that I can see that lives at the higher level. So the biggest, let's say, box is this one, right? This is one box. The whole page, the whole app, the whole design is one box. So I can probably create this box around it. Now, once I have my box, I will just go and create an HTML element right here in my diagram. So probably this main element, this one big box that will contain all other boxes, it's probably going to be the body element. Or maybe we can go one step further and just create a special, let's say, div with an ID, something like container. So I can either pick the body, the main body element as the container for this main box, or I can create a div within the body, and I can just make this container become this box. There are different like pluses and minuses, advantages and disadvantages of using the body as the main container element, or creating a div, an extra div inside the body as a container. This second choice gives us, at least in the long term, a little bit more flexibility to add more elements or some extra requirements more easily. So I will use a div with ID container, and that will be my main box. So what is the next step? Now, once we had like this main large box, and we have like kind of like scanned our image, our design, and found like the box that lives at the highest, let's say, level, we start going deeper. So we start by splitting the design into rows, into boxes that split the design in horizontal, let's say, parts, in rows. So I will pick different color and a different box, and I will try to pick the main horizontal boxes that live within this container element. So going one level deeper, I see this first horizontal box. This sticks out to me as one horizontal section, as a row in this design. Then I can also see that there is another horizontal section here. It kind of like sticks out because it has like a main background, this white background. Now at this point, one should probably recommend that we can either split this, make this one horizontal element, one block, or maybe we could split this into two. So maybe another thing would be to see these two parts of this area as two different horizontal like elements, two rows. Depending on your use case and what you're planning to do with your design, and especially when planning for a responsive design, this might be a good case to split this into two horizontal rows. For this one, I'm just going to go and grab like the first large horizontal section that I see that sticks out for me, and then I will split this internally into even more rows. I will start with on a large scale, and then split this even more. And the next horizontal part that I see here is, of course, this footer, this like bottom area. So start by defining the boxes, the rows inside this container element. And of course, I will write here the elements that will become these three rows. So I have one, let's say, header. This looks to me like a header area. I have this like main area. So I will use the HTML main, the semantic elements, and then the footer. So if you feel lost whenever you see a design and you want you're wondering how you're going to get from the design into HTML, a simple idea, a simple plan is to think in boxes. So you start with the main box and then start splitting your design into rows. So we have the body, we have the container, and then we have three elements. So now I will go back to my code and replicate this structure within my HTML. So I will go here, I will remove this, and I will start with the div with a class container. I will use a class container. And then inside there, I will put the header with some dummy text. And I also like to have like some comment above its section and some spacing to help me walk through my code and find the sections that I'm, let's say, main area, and then a footer, and then some dummy text here so that I can see something on my screen. So main, and then the header, and of course I can fold these sections and work on one particular section each time. So let me go back to my page and see how this looks like. Okay, you can see that it really doesn't look something like my design, but at least I have the structure that I planned and I created through the drawings. So the next step for me here is to add some colors, or maybe some outlines to actually distinguish between these all these different sections. So I will go and try to pick a different background color for these sections so that I can also like stick out here in my design. And for this one, I'm going to use the colors that I find here. So I'm going to use this color, this background color for the header and the footer, and this will probably remain a white background. So I have drag and drop these images in my browser. I will open up my DevTools, and then I'm going to like pick a color here. If you don't find like a color, if you're, I don't know, like have some other element selectors when you open the elements panel, you can just add a color here. So color black or whatever you want. So there's a color picker now that you can click, and then you can use the icon color, the eyedropper, and then select this color. So I know this is the hexadecimal value for this color, and I go back to my code to actually start creating my CSS. I'm going to put my CSS here on the right, so I can see both the HTML and the HTML and the CSS. And now I'm going to start. I have this color, which is like the dark background color. I will put these colors here. I will start picking each color that I see on my mockup and put them here inside these comments, and then I will actually transform this into a CSS variable so I can use it in my code. So let me pick up this other color that I see here. It's used in the text and in some boxes. So I see there's this kind of like light color. Go back to my VS Code. So that would be, let's say, I don't know, text, light color. And then I will go and pick up the so this color is the same as the background color. I have this, which is, it looks like a white. Yes, it's white color. So I have everything I need. Let me also check what color is used here. It's also kind of like the same color as the background. But let's just create this. So this dark background color is also used as a text color. So I'm going to write dark color and then use this. Now there are different ways and different naming conventions that we can use here. I'm just going to come up with some simple names for these three colors. And then I'm going to just add a text, I don't know, like text color, something for the main white color that we see in some areas. Since this white is going to be used as a hover color, I'm going to name this like hover color. And then let us apply these colors to our HTML. Now, in order to be able to quickly configure and customize this color, these colors in our website, I'm going to create some CSS variables. So I'm not going to copy and paste these values inside different like CSS selectors. I'm just going to start with some very basic CSS variables, and I'm going to set these variables to reflect the colors. So I'm going to grab this here. This is how we define a variable in CSS with a double hyphen. So dark BJ color, and then text light color, and then pick this one. And I have my three actually three colors. I can also create variables for these specific colors and apply them to these like variables. Like for example, I can say, I don't know, that this looks like maybe something, I don't know, like white color. I would say like, I don't know, either white or the hexadecimal, and then I could use this here as a variable. So I can use one variable to hold. So I can create variables, special variables for the colors, for the specific colors, and then I can create these CSS variables that are describing certain parts of the content, like text and background. I will just stick with a simple here scenario, just these four variables, but there's more that we can do and make our organize our variables and our naming in a better manner. Let's start with four basic. And now I'm going to go to the header, and I'm going to set a background color to be based on the variable named dark BZ color. So my header now is going to have this dark color. Let me try to put my browser to the left side, and let's continue from here. So okay, so you can see the header now has this background dark color. I will also make sure that the footer has this background color, so var dark BZ color. Now my footer has this color. The main will remain white. So let me put this here. Okay, so I see the header, I see the main, and I see the footer here. Now I probably want to change the color on the header and the footer to reflect the actual text light color that is used within a dark background. So for the color for this section, I'm going to select the text light color, and I will also copy this and move this in my footer. And I can now see the text within these dark areas. Okay, there's one thing that kind of like bothers me here. As you can see, there's a slight space on the left side. If I zoom in, you will see that we have a slight space at the top, at the right, and at the left side. Now, this is not required. As you can see from my design, I don't have this extra space here. This section just span the full width of the page. So I have to figure out where the space comes from and remove it so that these three areas just span the full width of the viewport. For this one, I'm going to need my inspector. So I'm going to right click and inspect. And then I'm going to highlight certain elements and go up the hierarchy of the DOM tree to actually see where the space comes from. So you can see if I highlight the footer or the main or the header, there's nothing highlighted here in the main screen. So there's no space that I see visually represented when I hover this element. So this space probably isn't part of these three elements. If I go one level higher and select the container, it's highlighted and I still don't see any spaces around it. So there's another element that is creating this extra space. I'm going to go one level higher to the body. And as you can see, when I click on the body or I hover over the body in my inspector, I can see this kind of like orangey looking color, which is the color for the margin. So the body element has a margin, and this margin creates actually the space around its children, its main content. Also, if I go to the computed tab here in my styles panel, you can see that yes, indeed the body has this 8 pixel margin. So what I want to remove this margin, this extra space, so that my the inner elements are just placed there without any extra space. Now I can test this before going back to my code. So I can go here in my computed panel and I can double click and I can set the margin to 0. And as you can see, when I set the margin top to 0, the space is gone. The same with the margin on the left, the margin on the right, and I can also remove the margin at the bottom. So since I don't need this extra space by the body, I will go back to I will refresh, and I will go back here, and I will reset this default margin to 0. So now my page has this nice styling. Okay, let me zoom out a bit and let's continue. Now, the second part that I want to show here is once we get this to this part, we have this like 3 main horizontal sections, these 3 main rows, like implemented as an HTML element, and we have some basic styling. We need to find a way to actually give these elements their specific height. So as you can see here, we have this element that takes up quite some space, and then we have the main element that takes up probably most of the viewport height, and then this footer. So I need to find a way on how to make this look like this. Have the footer with some height, the header with some height, and then the main content area will accept the bulk of the viewport height. So in order to do that, let me go here and move this once again to the right. For this one, I'm going to use the flexbox. So this particular case really will be it's really easy to implement this particular layout with the flexbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the container, and let me add an outline to see the container. This will help me like debug some styling issues. So I'm going to add a red outline to see like kind of like where this element is about in my page. Now the outline hides kind of like the areas that do not have space. So if I switch to border, I would just temporarily switch to border so I can see like the actual element. So as you can see, this is the container element, and it has like 3 block elements. Both header, main, and footer are semantic HTML elements that are block elements. So they take up a new line, they take up the full width of their containing element, that is the div width container, and they just take enough height to reflect their content. But I want something more than that. I want for the main, at least for the main area, to have like to span like the rest of the available empty space here. So in order to do that, I will just add a few padding values, a few padding units to the header and to the footer, just to make them look a little bit larger. So I will add padding of 1 rem to the header, and probably something a little bit bigger to give some space within these elements. If I inspect these elements right now, you will see that if I go here and I select the footer and I go here to select the computed, you will see we have the content box. This is the area that takes up enough space to display the content, the text in this case, and there's a padding that creates this space around the content. And of course, the same goes for the header. So main content, and then now I've added a padding to in order for these sections to take some more space and look a little bit nicer, just for the design part. So I need the rest of the free area here at the bottom to be moved here to the main area. I want this main content to take up the rest of the extra space that is found here. In order to do that, I first want to give my div container element full height so that it takes up the full height of the screen. As we can see here, it now takes enough space to display the main, the header, and the footer. So I'm going to go to the container and give this container a height of 100% of the viewport width. Now, if I do this, you will see that right now the container element takes up the whole space of the viewport width. And let me just switch from a red border to a red background, just to see it a little bit nicer way. So this is my container element that now spans like 100% of the viewport width, the viewport height, that's the V8s. And if I remove this, you will see that it just takes up enough space to display the header, the main, and the footer. But I want this to have more space than that. I really need more space. So height, some background color just for debugging purposes. This is going to greatly improve your debugging and styling process. So make sure to use background colors or borders, at least temporarily, so you can see where each element lies within the HTML document. Or of course, you can use the inspector. So once again, let me check the inspector and see that the div here. So the div here, I can see this blue overlay, which is the container's content area. So as you can see here, it spans the whole viewport height. If I uncheck here my height and I highlight the container, you will see that now the blue overlay changes to just a few pixels to just represent the header, the main, and the footer. So you can use both ways to see what's happening. Let me refresh. Okay, and let me put just this background color once again to see what's happening. So right now I want the main element to take up all this free space. I want to move all this free space into the main area so that there's no space at the bottom. Now let me switch back to the border because I think it makes more sense. So I want all this area at the bottom to be moved within this main content area. In order to do that, there's a really easy way. It's by using the flexbox. So I'm going to make the container div a flexbox element. So I'm going to change from the display block, which is the default display property for block elements, to display flex. Once I set the display to flex, you will see that the direction of the elements of this container element turn from from vertical to horizontal. So they're now stacked up in a horizontal manner. I don't want to do this. I want to still retain their horizontal stacking, their horizontal layering. So I'm going to change the flex direction to column, which is kind of like the vertical. So this is like vertical stacking, you might say, and this is a flex property. This is used only with elements that have the display flex property. So flex stuff, starting from this line, display flex, and then flex direction column. Now at this point nothing changes. It's still just like a display, an element with display block. The children within it are stacked one on top of each other, but display flex give me a nice property, nice extra property that can be used on one of these children, and it's called flex grow. So if I go to the main, and I will put the main right in between the header and the footer, so they kind of like reflect their HTML, as you can see, the HTML like hierarchy. I'm not going to put the main, for example, above the header. I want to be easily found when I go and find and want to find like the CSS selector for the HTML element. And in here, I'm going to use the flex grow. So as you can see here in VS Code, it says flex grow sets the flex grow factor. I can go to the MDN reference to read more. If I set this to 1, it will take up all the available extra space that is not used by any of the flex children and give it to the element that has flex grow 1. So this allows this element to take up the whole remaining space. So now I'm a little bit closer to my design. The last thing I want to do at this point, just to have a nice looking basic layout, is to give also some padding to this area so that it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, I'm going to remove my debugging tools here from the CSS, and as you can see, I have a very basic layout that looks a little bit closer to my initial design.